You wake up at 3 in the morning, not because of a nightmare, but because your brain just did the math again. Rent, groceries, the credit card bill, the thing you forgot to budget for, and it doesn't add up. So you lie there, staring at the ceiling, running the same numbers on a loop, even though you know, rationally, that there is nothing you can do about it right now. If that sounds familiar, you are not weak. You are not bad with money, and you are definitely not alone. According to the American Psychological Association's most recent Stress in America report, 77% of Americans say money is a significant source of stress in their lives, and similar numbers hold across the UK, Australia, and Canada. But here's what most people don't realize. Financial stress isn't just a feeling. It is a neurological event. And when it becomes chronic, meaning it happens week after week, month after month, it physically changes your brain. That's what this video is about. Not budgeting tips, not spend less, save more, but the actual science of what financial stress does to your mind and the psychology-backed strategies to stop it from running your life. Section 1. The Neuroscience of Financial Fear. Let's start inside your brain. When you receive a bill you can't pay, or you check your bank account and the number is lower than you expected, your brain processes that as a threat, not a metaphorical threat, a survival threat. The same neural circuitry that fires when you encounter a predator fires when you see a number that scares you. Here's how it works. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, detects the financial threat and immediately floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate climbs, your muscles tighten, your breathing shallows. This is the stress response, and in small doses, it's useful. It motivates action. But when the threat is financial, the threat rarely resolves in a single moment. You can't outrun debt the way you'd outrun a bear. The threat stays, and so the cortisol. Research published in Science magazine, one of the most widely cited studies on this subject, found that financial scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth. The researchers measured the IQ equivalent effect of poverty-level financial stress and found it temporarily reduces cognitive function by roughly 13 IQ points, comparable to losing a full night's sleep. Let that sink in. When you're deep in financial stress, you are literally less equipped to solve the financial problem causing the stress. It's a trap built into your own nervous system. And it gets more layered than that. Harvard economist Senthil Mullainathan, one of the lead researchers on that study, describes this as the bandwidth tax. Your working memory gets hijacked. Your ability to plan ahead, to resist impulsive decisions, to see long-term consequences, all of it gets quietly drained. This is why people under chronic financial stress sometimes make choices that look, from the outside, like bad decisions. They're not. They're decisions made with a cognitively overloaded brain. That distinction matters enormously. Section 2. What chronic stress actually does to your brain over time. Short-term stress is survivable, but chronic financial stress, the kind that has been running in the background for months or years, becomes much more serious. It restructures your brain. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational decision-making, impulse control, and planning, literally shrinks under prolonged cortisol exposure. Studies using MRI brain imaging have confirmed this. Chronic stress reduces gray matter volume in the prefrontal cortex. At the same time, the amygdala, that alarm center, grows more reactive, more sensitive. It starts firing faster, at lower thresholds. So the longer the financial stress goes on, the harder it becomes to think clearly about the financial stress. The brain becomes wired to scan for danger, not to solve problems, to survive them. There's a profoundly underreported connection to memory. Cortisol impairs the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. This is why people under financial stress often describe a kind of mental fog, forgetting things, struggling to concentrate, feeling like they can't hold a thought together. That's not laziness, that's cortisol doing damage. And the mental health consequences are staggering. A 2020 study in the journal Social Science and Medicine found that people experiencing financial strain are 3.7 times more likely to report depression and anxiety than people who are financially stable. Another study from the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute in the UK found that 86% of people with mental health problems said their financial situation had made their mental health worse, and 72% said their mental health had made it harder to manage their finances. A loop. A cruel, self-reinforcing loop. And I want to say this directly to you. If you have been in that loop, struggling mentally and financially at the same time, each one feeding the other, you didn't create that by failing. You walked into a biological trap. Understanding that is the first step out of it.
So we know chronic financial stress rewires the brain. But why does the worry keep coming back? Why, even when you close the laptop or put down the phone, does the financial anxiety follow you? The answer lies in something psychologists call rumination. Rumination is the mental habit of replaying a problem repeatedly without moving toward resolution. It feels like problem solving? It isn't. Researchers at Yale University found that rumination activates the default mode network, the brain's background processing system, which keeps anxiety alive even when you're not consciously focused on it. This is why you can be in a conversation, laughing with a friend, and suddenly feel a wave of dread for no apparent reason. Your background network has been running the financial anxiety the entire time, just below the surface. There's another factor: uncertainty. Neuroscience research from University College London showed that the brain responds more intensely to uncertain threats than to threats that are known and defined. In other words, not knowing how bad things might get is often neurologically more stressful than knowing exactly how bad they are. This is why vague financial dread, like "things are tight, I don't know how long I can keep this up," can feel more paralyzing than a specific crisis you can actually act on. Your brain hates the unknown. It fills uncertainty with worst-case scenarios, not because you're pessimistic, but because the threat detection system is doing its job. The problem is, it does its job too well. All right, let's talk about what to actually do. Not motivational platitudes, not vague advice. Specific, science-supported actions that address the neurological problem, not just the financial one. Strategy 1. Name the threat to deactivate it. There's a technique in neuroscience called affect labeling, and it's one of the most powerful and most overlooked tools for managing financial anxiety. Research by Matthew Lieberman at UCLA found that simply naming an emotion out loud or in writing reduces amygdala activation by measurable amounts. In plain terms, the moment you say, "I am scared that I won't be able to pay rent next month," you move the experience from the reactive emotional brain to the more rational prefrontal cortex. Practical application? Keep a 3-minute financial worry journal. Not to analyze, not to solve, just to name. I'm worried about X. I feel Y. That's it. Studies show this reduces the intensity of intrusive financial thoughts over time, typically within 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice. Strategy 2. Create a worry window. Here's something that sounds almost too simple, but the research behind it is surprisingly strong. Penn State psychologist Thomas Borkowitz pioneered a technique called stimulus control for worry, and it works like this. You designate one specific time each day, say 5:30 p.m. for 20 minutes, as your worry money time. Anytime a financial worry surfaces outside of that window, you consciously say, "Not now. I'll deal with you at 5:30. What this does neurologically is reduce the generalized activation of financial anxiety. Your brain learns that the threat doesn't need constant monitoring, it has a scheduled slot. Clinical trials on this technique show it can reduce general anxiety by 35 to 40% over 4 weeks. Not a cure, but a real measurable shift. Strategy 3. Address the bandwidth tax directly. Remember the bandwidth tax? The cognitive drain that makes it harder to solve the very problem you're stressed about? Here's the counter strategy: cognitive offloading. Instead of keeping financial information inside your head, running numbers mentally, trying to remember balances, due dates, obligations, externalize everything. Write it down, put it in a spreadsheet, use an app. The goal isn't organization for its own sake. The goal is to free working memory. When your brain doesn't have to hold the numbers, it has cognitive bandwidth back to process the numbers. A 2018 study in Physiological science found that externalizing cognitive load, getting it out of your head and onto a surface, measurably improves decision-making quality in high-stress situations. Even a simple one-page financial snapshot, income, outgoings, what you owe, what's due this month, can reduce the brain's threat response because it converts vague dread into specific, manageable information. And the brain, as we discussed, responds far better to the specific than to the unknown. Strategy 4. Interrupt the stress response with physiology. This one isn't about money at all. It's about your nervous system. When the amygdala fires and cortisol floods in, you cannot think your way out of that state. Logic doesn't work on a brain that thinks it's in survival mode. You have to work through the body. The fastest, most evidence-backed method is physiological sighing, a breathing pattern identified by David Spiegel and Andrew Huberman at Stanford. It works like this: 2 inhales through the nose, a full breath, then a second short inhale on top of it, followed by 1 long exhale through the mouth. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode, faster than any other conscious technique. It physically lowers cortisol within minutes. Do this before opening a bank account, before a difficult money conversation, before making any major financial decision under stress. A regulated nervous system makes better financial decisions. Full stop. Strategy 5. Reframe the narrative. Carefully. This is where the healing part comes in, and I want to be precise here because this isn't toxic positivity. Cognitive reframing, done properly, is not about pretending things are fine. It's about identifying the cognitive distortions that financial stress creates and correcting them. One of the most common, catastrophizing. The automatic mental leap from "things are tight right now" to "I will never be financially okay, I'm going to lose everything." Stress narrows the temporal window. Your brain can only see the current moment amplified. Reframing expands that window. Ask yourself, is this a permanent condition or a temporary one? What evidence do I have that this specific situation cannot change? Not to dismiss real hardship, but to give your prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, a chance to do what it's designed to do. CBT research consistently shows that targeted financial cognitive reframing reduces anxiety-driven financial decision-making and improves actual financial outcomes over 6 to 12 months. Not because positive thinking changes your bank balance, but because a calmer brain makes better choices, and choices, compounded over time, change outcomes.
Financial stress is not a character flaw. It is not a sign you're bad with money, or that you haven't tried hard enough, or that you somehow deserve this. It is a neurological response to real-world pressure, and it is happening in a brain that was designed for a world far simpler than the one we're living in. The brain that kept our ancestors alive on the savannah is now trying to process rent increases, student loans, and a cost of living crisis it was never built for. Give yourself some grace for that. And then give yourself the tools. Name the worry. Contain it. Offload the cognitive weight. Regulate the nervous system. Correct the distortions. Not all at once, one day at a time. Because here's what the neuroscience also tells us, and this part is important. The brain is plastic. Neuroplasticity is not a self-help buzzword. It is a biological fact. The same brain that can be reshaped by chronic stress can be reshaped back. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen if you give it the right conditions. And the first condition is this: knowing that what's happening to you is real, it is explainable, and it is not permanent. If this video helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if there's a specific part of this, the brain science, the strategies, a particular struggle that you'd like us to go deeper on, drop it in the comments. We'll be there.